What happens when the man who signs the paychecks starts mopping the floors? Yale Emerson stood outside the sliding glass doors of the 9th location of his family's hotel chain, arms crossed, the early morning chill biting through his cheap windbreaker. His fake name tag read Todd Lobby Custodian Trainee. He wore a gray janitor's uniform, dyed his hair darker, and sported a pair of thick-rimmed glasses. No one in this building had ever met him in person. This location had only opened a year ago. Perfect. The hotel had been inherited from his father 2 years ago. 9 locations across the state. Profitable, yes. But lately, guest reviews at this branch had dropped. Complaints about cleanliness, slow check-ins, and overworked staff. The manager's monthly reports blamed labor shortages and lazy hires. Yale had read enough excuses. He walked in and nodded to the front desk, where a young woman with deep eye bags and a too-tight ponytail was checking in a couple. Her nameplate read Rhea Zeller. Her voice cracked as she forced a smile. "Welcome to our hotel. I've upgraded your room and we've added complimentary breakfast for the inconvenience," she said, tapping at the keyboard. The man grunted, still annoyed. Rhea didn't react. She just kept apologizing, typing, adjusting. Yale made his way to the storage closet where the cleaning equipment was kept. He didn't announce himself, just grabbed the mop bucket and got to work. He pushed the mop across the marble lobby floor, nodding politely to guests. No one paid him any attention. Good, by the time the sun was fully up, the lobby was full of movement. A woman in a fitted blazer walked out of the office behind the front desk. "Rhea," she snapped, "you printed the wrong parking passes again." "I'll reprint them now," Rhea said quickly. "You said that yesterday. Fix it. We can't keep getting called by valet." Yale kept mopping, listening. The woman's name tag read Claire General Manager. Claire turned to him. "Hey, custodian guy, get the front windows, there's bird crap." "Right away," Yale said. She didn't even look at him. Around noon, Yale ducked into the break room for a bottle of water. Rhea was inside, sitting stiffly at the table, staring at her phone with dead eyes. She didn't notice him until he opened the fridge. "You okay?" Yale asked. She jumped slightly. "Oh yeah, just tired." She forced a smile. "You knew," started today. "Todd, Rhea, I'm the front desk clerk." "I figured." He pulled out a water bottle. "You been on since this morning?" She laughed softly, but it didn't sound amused. "Since yesterday, I clocked in at 8 a.m. I'll probably leave around 10 tonight." Yale blinked. "Wait, you've been here all night?" No, just a double, 14-hour shift. Happens a lot." She rubbed her temples. "We're short-staffed. You don't get a break. I take one when I can, like now. Claire's letting me eat while standing if no one comes to the desk." Yale sat down across from her, heartbeat picking up. "That normal here?" Rhea hesitated. "It's been rough the last few months. We lost 2 people. One moved, one quit. Claire said corporate froze hiring. Said we couldn't afford more people till next quarter." He stared at her. "And you're doing 14-hour shifts, 5 days in a row, yeah, sometimes 6. She gave a weak shrug. "As long as I don't collapse, right?" He didn't answer, just nodded, then stood up. Back in the lobby, Claire was barking at a young cleaning guy. "No, you can't use that mop on hardwood. That's for tile." "God, do I have to show you every single thing?" Yale stepped up and said, "I can take over here." Claire didn't even glance at him. Good. By 6 p.m., Yale had seen enough. Guests waited in long lines as Rhea worked alone. Phones rang off the hook. Claire stayed holed up in the back office, only coming out to scold or micromanage. At 8, a man in a gray suit walked in, probably the district manager, judging by his clipboard. He greeted Claire with a hug and a joke. She laughed loudly, flipping her hair. Yale mopped near the elevator, watching. "So, how's the staff holding up?" the man asked. A few complainers, but I weed them out. That Rhea girl, constantly tired, slow on check-ins. I might cut her hours, see if she quits." Yale froze. "Isn't she the one you had doing doubles all week?" the man asked casually. Claire laughed. "Yeah, but come on, if you can't handle long hours, this isn't the job for you." Yale didn't say a word. He pushed the mop into the supply closet, shut the door quietly, and walked back into the bright lobby. He passed Rhea, still standing, still typing, still smiling at guests who snapped at her. He clenched his fists. Something in him cracked. He was done watching. By the time Yale returned early the next morning, the sky was still dark over the parking lot. The automatic lobby doors whirred open as he stepped inside. The same faint scent of overused disinfectant hung in the air. He checked the scheduling clipboard in the back hallway. Rhea was opening again. That left her with maybe 7 hours between yesterday's double and today's shift. He pushed his cart of cleaning supplies past the front desk. Rhea stood there again, shoulders hunched, quietly tapping at the keyboard. Her eyes were red-rimmed and her hands trembled slightly as she handed a key card to a guest. When the guest walked off, Yale approached the counter. "Morning," he said, keeping his voice low. "You get any sleep?" She looked up slowly. 3 hours. "I set an alarm, but I think I slept through the first 2. You shouldn't be here right now." Rhea gave a tired half-laugh. "Neither should half the staff, but here we are." He leaned against the counter. "Anyone else on today?" "Just me and Jeremy for the desk." "Housekeeping's down to 2 this week. Danny's out sick and they didn't call in anyone to cover." Yale stayed silent, processing. "How long's it been like this?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Since January, really. After we opened the new wing, Claire said we had to tighten operations. She keeps telling us to think long-term, efficiency over comfort." He studied her for a moment. "You ever think of quitting?" Rhea snorted. "Sure, every other week, but I need the job. My dad's insurance lapsed and I've been covering his meds." Yale nodded slowly. "You shouldn't have to choose between helping your dad and burning out." Rhea gave a small shrug, but didn't respond. She turned her attention back to her screen as another guest walked in, expression already sour. Yale stepped aside and returned to the hallway behind the supply closet. He pulled out his phone and opened the internal scheduling system. Claire had marked Rhea as optional coverage for next week, as though she were a backup, not the only person keeping the front desk operating. He switched off the screen and walked toward the back office. Claire was inside, seated at her desk, coffee cup in hand, scrolling through a spreadsheet. She didn't look up when he knocked. "What?" "I was told to bring in the updated linen report," Yale said, holding up a blank clipboard he'd grabbed for show. "Leave it on the chair." He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. Claire finally looked up. "You're the new guy, right?" "Todd?" "Yeah, you don't need to be in here. I've got a question." She sighed and leaned back, setting her coffee down. "Make it fast." "Why's Rhea pulling 70-hour weeks?" Claire's gaze sharpened. "Excuse me? You've got her doing doubles almost every day. She's one person." "That's not sustainable." Claire smiled tightly. "That's not your concern. You're here to mop floors, not manage staff." Yale didn't back down. "So you know she's working those hours. I schedule her, don't I? And you don't see a problem with that?" Claire stood now slowly. "Look. We all make sacrifices. If she can't handle it, she can leave. I'm not here to babysit people's energy levels. We're in hospitality. That means long hours and no complaining." Yale took a slow breath. "Does corporate know your staffing plan is to push one person until they break?" Claire's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" "No," he said evenly. "Just asking if they know." Claire walked around the desk until she was standing directly in front of him. "Let me explain how this works. I run this location. You don't question me. You clean." Yale's jaw tightened. "Understood." He turned and left the office before he said something he couldn't take back. Later that afternoon, he joined Jeremy behind the desk while Rhea stepped away for a quick restroom break. Jeremy was younger, maybe 19 or 20, with a nervous energy. He kept glancing toward the guest lounge like he expected trouble. "You just start here?" he asked. "Yeah, second day." Jeremy adjusted his name tag. "You might want to keep your head down. Claire doesn't like people who talk too much." "What do you mean?" "She listens through the phone line sometimes. If you complain, she'll write you up." Yale frowned. "Seriously?" Jeremy nodded. "Last week, a guest asked if we had any gluten-free options. I said I didn't think so, and Claire said I lowered the image of the brand. I got written up for lack of enthusiasm." "How long have you been here?" 3 months. I'm saving for school, but I'm not sure I'll make it that long, Rhea returned and Jeremy moved aside. She handed Yale a note. Room 212 called again. They said the air unit's leaking. I'll check it, he said, tucking the note into his pocket. The leak turned out to be from the ceiling vent condensation pooling and dripping onto the carpet. He left a service request form on the door but knew no one from maintenance would respond. The on-call tech left 2 weeks ago and hadn't been replaced. He returned to the lobby just as Claire exited the elevator with a tablet in hand. Jeremy, she called, where's the bell cart? Jeremy looked up. I left it by the conference room. A guest needed help with chairs. Claire shook her head. That's not your job, that cart's for luggage only. If I see it moved again, I'll write you up. Jeremy opened his mouth, then closed it. Claire turned to Rhea. You've got a group check-in in 20 minutes. I want it done in under 10. They're a party of 11, Rhea said gently. It might take 10 minutes, Claire repeated, then walked off. Yale watched Rhea's shoulders stiffen again. That night, he stayed after his shift ended. He helped Jeremy carry linens to the upper floors and restock the guest supply closet. No one asked why he was still there. No one noticed. At 11:15, just before lockup, he walked into Claire's office. She was packing her bag, humming to herself. Done for the day? He asked. She looked up. Why are you still here, finishing some rounds? Well, don't make a habit of overtime. We don't pay janitors extra. He stepped forward and pulled the ID badge from his pocket. The laminated plastic read, Yale Emerson President and CEO. Claire stared at it, then at him. You're joking. No, she laughed once, uneasy. Is this some kind of I own this company, he said, voice steady. My family built it. And I've spent the past 2 days watching you run this place into the ground. Claire's mouth opened, but nothing came out. I spoke to your desk clerks. I worked side by side with them. I saw a young woman forced to work 14-hour days with no break. I watched you belittle staff, ignore safety concerns, and lie to your superiors. I didn't. You did, he said sharply. And you're done here. Claire's eyes widened. You can't just, you're being terminated effective immediately. HR will follow up within 24 hours. Until then, you are not to step foot inside this building. She stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed her bag and stormed past him, heels echoing. He walked to the lobby. Rhea was still there, wiping the counter with a damp cloth. Jeremy leaned against the wall, half asleep. Yale approached them. Both of you go home. Now, Rhea looked confused. What? I'm the owner. Claire's gone, permanently. There will be a regional manager here tomorrow to take over until we find someone better. Jeremy blinked rapidly. Wait, you're him? Yes, Rhea stepped back slowly. Are you serious? He nodded. You've both done more than anyone should ever be asked to. You're off for the next 2 days. Full pay. Starting this week, we're bringing in new hires. You'll never work a double again. She stared at him. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just rest. Jeremy wiped his eyes. Thank you. Yale watched as they gathered their things and walked out into the night. The lobby fell quiet, finally still. He sat behind the front desk alone and stared at the empty schedule on the monitor. Then he started rewriting it from scratch. By the time the regional manager arrived the next morning, the hotel was already stirring with the tense energy of transition. Yale had spent the night reviewing employment files in the back office, cross-checking schedules, and quietly calling in a few trusted staff from nearby locations to help keep things afloat while he implemented changes. He refused to let the dishonest systems Claire left behind unravel into chaos, but he also knew the real work was just beginning. Kenner Reeves stepped through the sliding glass doors at 7:30 sharp, her heels clicking across the lobby floor. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed and efficient, with a calm presence that didn't need volume to command a room. Yale met her near the reception desk, where Jeremy had just finished setting out a tray of pre-filled keycards for the expected business groups. Yale, she said, extending a hand. You weren't kidding. I skimmed the incident notes last night. It's worse than I thought. It is, he said, but we've still got a few good people holding this place together. We start with them. Kenna nodded once and got to work immediately, pulling reports while Yale stepped into the staff room to check on housekeeping. Naomi, one of the senior housekeepers, had returned from her sick leave that morning, her face still pale, but her eyes alert. She was folding towels at the prep table, her phone buzzing every few minutes on silent. "Naomi," he said, stepping inside. "How's the shift going so far?" She looked up, surprised. "You're the owner, right?" "I am." She hesitated, then straightened her posture. "I'm still catching up. A few rooms weren't turned over yesterday. I'll handle those after the morning rounds. Don't push too hard. We brought in 2 temp staff from the downtown location. They'll help cover until we hire replacements." Her shoulders lowered slightly. "That's good. Thank you. You're not the only one who's been overworked. I'm fixing it." She glanced down at her phone again. "Claire used to say the opposite, said we had to toughen up or transfer out." Yale's jaw tightened. "That's not how we do things anymore." By mid-morning, Kenna had taken over the back office. She pulled Claire's emails, reviewed guest feedback logs, and flagged discrepancies in payroll that had gone uncorrected for months. One entry showed that Rhea had clocked out at 2 a.m. during a recent storm, only to clock back in at 6:30 the next morning. The hotel had been short-staffed that day, and Claire had marked the gap as voluntary rest. Yale stood behind Kenna, arms folded. "She didn't log that as overtime," Kenna said flatly. "She labeled it as a non-mandated voluntary return. That's wage theft." "I want every single entry like that flagged and sent straight to legal," Kenna nodded, already compiling. They were interrupted by a knock. Jeremy stood at the door, looking unsure. "Sorry," he said, "but there's a guest at the front desk asking for you. Says he's from corporate accounting." Yale and Kenna exchanged a glance. They followed Jeremy out into the lobby, where a man in a dark polo shirt and messenger bag waited near the counter, arms crossed. His badge identified him as Glenn Ray's senior auditor. "I was in the area," Glenn said without preamble. "Wanted to see with my own eyes what the hell was going on. I've got reports of unauthorized schedule changes, misappropriated maintenance funds, and 4 unresolved HR complaints that were never escalated." "They weren't just unresolved," Yale said. "They were buried." Glenn tapped the counter with his fingers. "Claire requested a budget increase for Q1 maintenance. 30,000. It was approved, not one receipt entered the ledger." Kenna pulled up the budget records on her tablet. "No vendor confirmations either, just internal transfers." Glenn's eyes narrowed. "You think she pocketed it?" "I think we'll know by the end of the day," Yale said. "Run your audit, full access. If she stole from us, we'll press charges." Glenn nodded once and got to work without another word. By early afternoon, Rhea returned from her mandated rest day. She looked more awake, but there was still a careful reserve in her step, as if she didn't quite believe the change was real. She approached the front desk cautiously and saw a new shift supervisor standing beside Jeremy, an assistant manager brought in temporarily from another branch. "Hey," she said, placing her bag under the counter. "You sure you want me back already? We need you," the assistant manager said. "But not like before. You're on a normal 8-hour shift today, no back-to-backs." She looked over and saw Yale near the elevator, clipboard in hand. He gave her a nod, then walked into the hallway without interrupting. Rhea turned back to the desk, blinking slowly. "Okay." In the service corridor behind housekeeping, Yale met with Davis, the maintenance technician who'd been covering 2 hotels after the previous on-site engineer quit. Davis was in his 40s, calm and methodical, with oil-stained hands and a quiet way of speaking. "There's a leak in room 212, Yale said. "Condensation from the vent. It's been flagged for weeks." Davis gave a slow nod. "I reported it twice. No one followed up." "Claire said it wasn't urgent. It's damaging the carpet. I want it fixed today." "I'll get it done, but I'm backlogged. The rooftop exhaust fan's been rattling for 3 weeks and the boiler's overdue for servicing." Yale exhaled. "You need help?" "I do. You'll get it. We're hiring a second full-time tech. You'll set the interviews." Davis looked surprised. Me, you've been doing the job of 3 people. You know what's needed better than anyone else here. Davis paused, then nodded again. I'll bring in someone who won't cut corners. Good. Back in the lobby, Glenn returned with a hard copy printout of his preliminary findings. She funneled over 22,000 to a shell vendor, he said, tapping the page. No address, no phone number, no tax ID. Just an internal routing code that links back to a personal checking account. Kenna leaned over his shoulder. How long do you think this went on? Minimum 6 months, possibly longer. Yale stared at the page. We reported and pressed charges. No negotiation, no settlement. Glenn nodded. Already in motion. At 5, just as the late check-ins began trickling in, Yale walked into the staff room again. This time the energy was different, fewer tense glances, less silence. Naomi was showing 2 trainees how to prep supply carts. Jeremy was laughing softly with the assistant manager about a guest who'd brought his own toaster. Even Rhea, seated briefly for the first time that day, was sipping a bottle of water without looking over her shoulder. Yale stepped up beside her. I wanted to ask you something, he said. She looked up. Sure, I'm restructuring this location. That means a new general manager. I can bring someone in from another branch or I can promote from here. She blinked. You're asking if I want it. I'm asking if you're ready. Rhea leaned back slightly. I don't know. I've never managed before. You've handled front desk, customer service, scheduling, and training. You ran this place without a title. She looked down at the table for a long moment. If I say yes, can I do it my way? You'll have the authority to build your team, set fair schedules, and hold people accountable. But you'll also be expected to lead. No shortcuts. She nodded slowly. Then yes, I want it. Start as interim. We'll review in 60 days. She stood and shook his hand. Deal. That night, Yale didn't stay late. He walked the property one last time, checked the new maintenance logs, and watched as the staff moved through their routines with a steadier rhythm. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be for a while. But it was a beginning. As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, he turned back once and saw the lobby through the glass. Rhea speaking with a guest, Jeremy resetting the brochure stand, Naomi heading upstairs with the last supply cart. They weren't just holding it together anymore. They were rebuilding it. Rhea sat in the quiet corner office that had belonged to Claire just 2 mornings ago. The blinds were half drawn, letting in the soft, late afternoon light. The desk was mostly cleared now, no more stacks of unfiled forms or passive-aggressive notes left for staff. A new nameplate rested at the edge. Rhea Zeller, Interim General Manager. She hadn't asked for it. Kenna had handed it to her earlier that day, simply saying, "It's time people knew who's actually been running this place." Outside, the hotel was running on a rhythm that felt unfamiliar but right. The temporary assistant manager was organizing the evening shift, while new staff from the nearby location steadily filled in the cracks. 2 new hires had completed onboarding that morning, one for night security, another for weekend housekeeping support. It wasn't stability yet, but it was movement. Yale stepped into the office at a measured pace, a folder in hand. He placed it gently on the desk without sitting. "Payroll adjustments are in," he said. "Back pay included. You'll see corrections to everyone's records going back 6 months." Rhea nodded, keeping her hands folded. "Jeremy told me. He didn't believe it at first. I don't blame him. Most people don't expect anyone to make it right after the damage is done." She leaned back slightly in the chair. "I didn't think this would happen. I thought maybe you'd fire Claire and disappear. Like CEOs usually do." "I used to," he said plainly. "Until I realized I didn't know what my own company looked like anymore." She studied him for a moment, then said, "You looked exhausted yesterday." "I was, not from the hours, from what I saw." She tilted her head. "And now I'm angry. But focused." He stepped back toward the door, then paused. "One thing I wanted to ask, Claire had a list of employees she kept off the schedule rotation, some marked as unreliable. Do you know anything about that?" Rhea's expression hardened. "Yeah." She blocked 3 people from getting regular hours. One of them was Letitia, a single mom who needed consistent shifts. Claire didn't like the way she looked, said she wasn't front-facing material. Yale's jaw tightened. She rotated her to laundry and stripped her of weekend hours. Letitia asked to be transferred to another location. Claire denied it. Where is she now? She's been calling the downtown branch for weeks, trying to get rehired. They said she needed a clearance from this location. Yale picked up the desk phone and dialed. Get her back. Full reinstatement. If she's available, I want her here by week's end. Rhea nodded once. She'll show up. She always did. As Yale stepped out, Kenna was waiting in the hallway with a list of applicants for the permanent maintenance position. She handed it over with a short note. Davis wants to interview all of them in person. He's taking it seriously. Good, Yale replied. Let him, he earned that. They walked together through the back corridor. A few new faces passed them in uniform, quiet, focused, already folding into the rhythm. One of them, a young woman with a braided bun and clipboard, gave a brief nod as she passed. New front desk trainee, Kenna explained. Name's Alina. High marks from her last manager. Observing Jeremy for now. Yale said nothing but made a mental note to follow up. Near the employee lounge, they passed the break area where Jeremy was speaking with Naomi. He was reviewing a list of check-in questions while she rewrapped a bandage on her hand. She fell on the loading dock last month, Kenna said quietly. Claire reported it as a minor slip. Didn't document it properly? Get that fixed, Yale replied. Retroactively, if needed. I want her record corrected and any medical costs reimbursed. Kenna nodded. Already started the file. Back in the lobby, a guest approached the front desk in a rush. He was holding a room key and gesturing erratically. Alina stepped forward, her expression calm. There's a leak in the bathroom, the man said. I've got a conference in 20 minutes. Can you move me or what? Alina turned to Jeremy. Can you check if 207 is clear? Jeremy tapped the keyboard, then nodded. Cleaned and ready. Alina pulled a new key card and handed it over. We've upgraded your room. I'll have someone transfer your bags. Sorry about the inconvenience, sir. The man grumbled something under his breath but took the card and walked off. Yale watched Alina return to the desk without missing a beat. She's sharp, he said quietly. Kenna nodded. Second language too, Spanish. She's fluent. Let's bring her in for development, he said. If she's willing, track her progress. As evening settled in, Yale returned to the office one last time. Rhea was now standing by the window, arms crossed, watching the parking lot fill for the evening rush. You said something yesterday, she said as he entered. About people doing the work without the title, he nodded. I remember. I know I'm interim, but if I do this right, if the team holds. You'll drop the interim, he finished for her. Yes, she turned. I want to build something that lasts, not just patch holes. You will, he said. But you'll be held to the same standard as anyone else in this company, no shortcuts, no coasting. I wouldn't know how to coast if I tried, she said, almost amused. He smiled faintly. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. Tomorrow we'll have a full staff meeting. I want everyone present. We'll lay out the reforms, the new reporting structure, and the oversight protocols. I want transparency going forward. Rhea nodded. Will you be there? I will, but I won't lead it. You will, she blinked. Why? Because it's your team now, he said, and they need to hear it from the person who stood beside them when no one else would. The next morning, the staff gathered in the main conference room. It wasn't a grand affair. Just 2 folding tables pushed together and a whiteboard with fresh markers. But everyone showed up: housekeeping, desk clerks, maintenance, even food service. A few sat on the floor when chairs ran out. Rhea stood at the front, holding the same clipboard Claire once used to issue reprimands. But she didn't read from it, she spoke plainly. This is a new start, she said. Not perfect, not finished, but real. We're bringing in more help. We're giving back what was taken, and we're building this place together. No applause, just silence, then a few nods, then more. Jeremy raised a hand. What if we see something that doesn't feel right? She pointed to the whiteboard where a number was written clearly. Direct line corporate oversight, call that or call me. There's no penalty for speaking up anymore. Later that day, A delivery truck pulled into the side lot. New mattresses, requested weeks ago and never approved, were finally arriving. Davis oversaw the unloading with a clipboard and a small grin of satisfaction. In the back hallway, Alina helped Letitia, now reinstated, find her locker. Rhea walked past them, heading toward the front desk where a guest was waiting for assistance. Yale stood near the elevator, watching. He didn't interfere. He didn't need to. The hotel was no longer running on fear. It was running on trust, accountability, and the quiet determination of people who had decided enough was enough. And this time, the person in charge had earned her place step by step, floor by floor.